Welcome to In Discovery Mode, the podcast from ModeOne, where we explore how modern data is shaping the future of discovery. Today's conversation hits on something every attorney, especially the next generation, needs to understand. Your client's life lives on their phone, but discovery practices haven't caught up. Today's conversation is led by Ryan Frye, ModeOne's Chief Innovation Officer, and Jamie Berry, Vice President and General Manager at Evolver. They unpack why full device imaging is often unnecessary, how it creates risk, and why targeted, defensible mobile collection is becoming the new standard. Let's get into it.
Jamie, man, good to see you.
Good to see you, buddy. It's been a couple of times over the past month. That's good for us, right?
I know. Legal Week in the new venue. That was a big change, but I think it went off well.
Yeah, I was certainly excited for the venue itself, man. I think, anytime you can consolidate all those different exhibitors into one space and not have to go up, 6 escalators and try to, piece together with a trail of popcorn, like where you're going and how you're getting to a certain booth. I think that's all good. I know the event space itself, as I said, was certainly an upgrade from the Hilton. I think people were still a little tentative about how to get all the way down to Javits and how to balance their day between, getting some more energy or going back to their room to work. But all in all, I think it worked out really, really well. Hopefully the show was good for you guys.
Yeah, I think it was a big hit. Lots of good excitement around what we're doing here. So awesome, man. Love to have you on the podcast. Appreciate you being here. And we were talking when we saw each other last, about law students today, because it's kind of important to both of us. And one thing I was thinking about is, law students today aren't becoming lawyers in a world where their entire life's on their phone, right? And I don't know, because I'm not in the classroom every day or often, right? But the way we're teaching discovery hasn't felt like it's quite caught up. Like you and I spent time at the U of F conference together last month. I'm just kind of curious, you're actually in the classroom teaching. And are they thinking about data that way yet, that their phones could contain their entire life?
Yeah, no, look, it's a great question. And certainly kudos to Professor Bill Hamilton down at the University of Florida for sort of historically being on the, and certainly today as well, being on the leading edge of, how do we teach real world type things to these law students, right? It's one thing to go into a law library and read a torts book or read a book on property law, right? And sit for the bar exam and know how to practice there. It's another sort of whole world, if you will, teaching litigators what they need to be looking out for and what they need to understand when their clients have real world challenges that, to your point, revolve around new sources of data, right? And I've been teaching this class at my law school alma mater at Catholic University Law School going on almost 10 years now. And it's changed even, since 2015, 2016, but when I taught then. And to your point, these 20-something-year-old students that are there, and certainly there are some older students who have decided to go into law at different points in their career. They start to understand, right? Like when I walk around with a laptop, my email doesn't live there, right? They some of them think that their email certainly still lives on their phone, but I think as they start to understand, that their email lives in the cloud somewhere, and it's probably under lock and key from either the company that they're working for or sitting on some Gmail server somewhere. I think they're starting to understand that when their clients are hit with a litigation or their clients come to them to try to understand what's going on from an investigation standpoint, they have to think of the world a little differently, right? Not just from an email perspective, Brian, as you know, right? What chat apps are they living on? Are they sharing information on LinkedIn, on Facebook Messenger, on Snapchat, right? Like where are they saving and communicating with whomever is involved in that matter? Where are they saving that stuff? Where are they creating content? And then how do we go get it without it, disrupting somebody's life? I mean, look, man, if I had to live without my cell phone for a day because I had to turn it on over to a ModeOne examiner, not only would I be a little worried about what they may get into from a personal standpoint, whether it's pictures of my kids or, personal communication, I'm going to start to think about that a little bit differently, right?
Yeah, definitely. So would you agree with me that that law school is kind of teaching law, but not data reality, where most up and coming lawyers may think of email as their Outlook and documents as files. But are they getting taught, messaging apps, and does that live in the cloud or on a phone? And, what kind of device is it? And everyone's kind of living a mobile first kind of world. So just kind of curious, when you're guest lecturing, do students realize how much data lives in these outside of these traditional systems?
Yeah, I think the answer to that question depends on where the students are going to school, right?
Okay.
I think I've seen some statistics that probably need to be updated, but were updated maybe 5 or 6 years ago. There's a very finite amount of law schools that are teaching a discrete class on eDiscovery, right? And let's just say it's 20% of the law schools across the country. Thankfully, for the students that go to Catholic University Law School, there's a dedicated 2-credit class every fall that really, the one that I teach, that dives into some of these topics, right? I remember when I first started doing this, Ryan, I got a call from a civil procedure professor who said, "Hey, we want to talk about eDiscovery. Can you take 40 minutes to kind of go over what's in eDiscovery?" And you can't cover that much, within 40 minutes. And I remember thinking to myself, walking in the door that day, how in the heck am I going to cover some of these topics without scaring the hell out of all these law students and not wanting them to not want to be litigators, right? So I think the answer to your question is, where do they go into law school? Do they offer a discrete class on eDiscovery? And then how deep are the professors that are teaching that discrete eDiscovery class getting around data sources? Are they just teaching the EDRM, right? And then covering a box of the EDRM for each class of the semester? And more importantly, are they bringing in additional guest lectures to be able to provide some depth in each of those areas, right? What I try to do in my class, not only avail the students to technologies, whether it's relativity or some other sort of eDiscovery in a box tool, but I try to bring experts that talk about relevant topics like mobile data, like data privacy, right? And some of these other topics, so that they really get an understanding. Hey, if my client calls me and says, I got this problem, I can't think of it, right, at a 50,000 foot level. I got to dive into each of these areas. And I do think, Ryan, that makes those newer attorneys incredibly valuable to the firms and the practices that they join. Because as we all know, most lawyers weren't taught this, kind of growing up. And they're the lawyers that are partners now, and they're going to rely on these associates to really bring a different understanding of the process, a deeper understanding of each sort of area that it really touches in those litigations and those investigations. And they become, rock stars in those firms, man. They really, really do. So I think you're right. I think the vast majority of law students that are coming out of law school probably aren't even scratching the surface from an eDiscovery perspective. People that are going to University of Florida, the people that are going to, Catholic University and others where we know people are teaching, they're the ones that are getting sort of the kimono taken off and digging a little deeper into some of these topics.
Well, that's good. That's good. And I agree. The limited times I've been in front of law students, it's been important to us to just sort of kind of get them to start thinking like their client, teaching these young attorneys that you gotta put yourself in their shoes a little bit. And so, I liked what you said earlier. If you ask the client for their phone, I mean, you're not really asking for the data that you're after. You're asking for their life. That's super scary for anybody. I don't really care who you are. So.
And I think we need to do a great job, right? And whether this is, certainly it starts at the law school level so that people understand, the difference between doing a full forensic image of a phone and doing a targeted data collection on the apps or in the storage where we know data may live that may be relevant to a particular engagement, right? Like the last thing I think we need to do is to tell a law student, hey, if you got a client that's got a litigation or responding to a subpoena, you got to line them all up to come into this conference room. They got to hand over their phone for the next 4 to 6 hours, like nobody's going to come into work that day, right? Like
Nobody's.
It's just not going to happen. I think it's up to us and certainly utilizing the technology that you guys offer at ModeOne and the different sort of ways in which we think about doing collections, right? Especially having targeted collections as the new standard that we're offering to the industry. Getting students to understand that that's really the way we want to drive their client and the behavior around collection, I think is the right thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. We're out there, kind of educating, these three things, what is it you're looking for? Where does it live? And how do you get it defensibly? So what are you looking for? The custodians, what dates, what topics, right? Where are those data sources? Is it SMS, WhatsApp? Is it in the cloud? Is it on a phone? Is it on a computer? Back office closet. Where is it? And how are we going to get it? Are we going to do a full image of it, or are we going to do targeted precision collections? And how are you going to do that, remote or in person? You got to balance kind of the risk versus defensibility. So, I think we've all talked about kind of, full collections or full images are needed sometimes when you need those deep dive analysis or those deep investigations. But we're starting to see, obviously, the huge trend from what we do, adopting the targeted collections is what the clients want, right? Outside counsel is learning about, corporations want. Do you think that's going to catch on with the law students here in your next sessions?
Yeah, look, I think any up and coming lawyer, right, wants to figure out how they can provide value to their clients, right? And I think they do that by talking about, hey, we may not need the same amount of spend, right, to access the information that is critically important in this particular case. So they're checking that box, right? They're also becoming a trusted advisor to their clients when they're providing valuable consultation, and advice to their clients by saying, hey, look, we need to be a little bit more strategic here, right? And we need to build some trust, not only with their client, but their client's employees, right? And how do we do that? Well, we first do that by saying, you don't need to hand me your phone for the next 6 hours and go back to your office and, good luck what we're going to find, right? You be really strategic and you build that trust with your clients and their employees by talking about strategic ways to find the right data, right? And not going into any personal repositories that may be on that. So, I think that is starting to lend itself to young attorneys by saying, hey, I'm not just out there sort of being a lawyer for these end clients. I'm really being more of a trusted advisor. I have their best interest at heart, and they don't see me and you at ModeOne and other sort of providers, Evolver included, as somebody that's going to come in and disrupt that trust, right? Like I want to walk arm in arm with you and with the lawyer into that client's office, and I want them to see a united front with an organization that is looking to protect their best interest, to spend, to be the most efficient in terms of spend that we have to be given sort of the scenario that we're up against. And if we can all present a united front, and that lawyer is somebody that, 4 years ago sat in my eDiscovery class, and they're not scared about that proposition, right? They recognize that they can lead with some value there. That's when I think we're making a little bit bigger impact than anybody else can, for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. That's a job well done when you get to that point. That's great. Yeah. I think what we're hearing a lot too is, mistakes aren't happening at collection, that they're happening before collection, right? So when your scoping isn't done right, you're not asking the right questions, you're not putting yourself in their shoes, you're not leading, with your life is in your phone first, mistakes can happen. So Jamie, man, it's a pleasure speaking with you again. Always good to see you on the conference circuit. I hope to run into you at a baseball game or something soon when the Royals and the Orioles play each other.
Yeah, buddy, and good luck to your Nebraska Cornhuskers this weekend. You go from not winning an NCAA tournament game to being front and center in the Sweet 16. So enjoy all the stress that comes with that, buddy, for sure.
Yeah, pray for me tomorrow night.
Will do, my friend. Brian, thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it.
All right, good to see you, buddy.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of eDiscovery Mode. Follow us on LinkedIn for updates on new episodes or visit us online at www.modeone.io.